The pervasive scent of stale coffee and desperation clung to Lena Petrova's tiny, cluttered apartment, a constant companion to her late-night pursuits. Moonlight, fractured by the grimy window pane, illuminated stacks of dog-eared tomes on advanced mathematics, intricate knot theory, and forgotten languages. A precarious tower of abstract knowledge. The glow from her single, dim desk lamp cast long, dancing shadows, turning her cramped living space into a cavern of complex thought. Most evenings, she subsisted on instant noodles and bitter, lukewarm tea, her mind a ceaseless current of patterns and logic, even as her stomach grumbled a quiet protest. In the sprawling, echoing halls of Madame Vivienne Dubois' opulent mansion, Lena was largely a ghost. She moved through the gilded rooms, a small, unassuming figure clad in her simple cleaning uniform, almost camouflaged amidst the priceless tapestries and gleaming antique furniture. Her silence was often mistaken for a lack of engagement, her intense gaze interpreted as mere diligence. But beneath her unassuming exterior, a brilliant mind whirred, driven not by the pursuit of wealth or recognition, but by an insatiable, almost primal, curiosity. She sought understanding for understanding's sake, a quiet, solitary pursuit that often felt at odds with the performative luxury and superficiality of her surroundings. Her cleaning was meticulous, almost meditative, her movements precise as she polished the intricate marble floors, the rhythmic hum of her machine a constant counterpoint to the distant, dismissive chatter of Madame Dubois and her wealthy associates. Recognition was a secondary concern. The underlying truth, however elusive, was her primary obsession. One biting autumn afternoon, after a particularly grueling shift, polishing the endless expanse of the ballroom's parquetry, Lena noticed a small, intricately carved wooden bird tucked haphazardly into a waste bin. She recognized it instantly as a sentimental heirloom belonging to Eleanor, a quiet, elderly maid who had recently lost her husband and treasured the little bird as a memento from their early days together. A careless young staff member, rushing through cleanup after a garden party, must have inadvertently swept it in. Despite her aching back and the gnawing ache of hunger, Lena paused. She saw the potential despair in Eleanor's eyes if it were truly lost, the quiet tragedy of another precious memory fading. Without a word, she carefully retrieved the bird, delicately wiped away the dust, and later that evening, when no one was looking, placed it discreetly on Eleanor's pillow. She didn't seek thanks. A quiet, grateful nod from a relieved Eleanor the next morning was enough. She simply slipped away. Her inherent integrity, her empathy, and her quiet diligence demonstrated in that small, anonymous act. This was Lena's quiet, save the cat moment, a testament to her intrinsic goodness that fostered immediate reader empathy, subtly contrasting her character with the mansion's often self-serving inhabitants. Lena's intellectual approach was, to put it openly, unorthodox. While other staff members spent their breaks gossiping or scrolling on their phones, Lena would invariably pull out a small, worn notepad. On it, she would sketch peculiar blends of intricate geometric designs and abstract, almost artistic patterns. She would draw swirling fractals that seemed to twist into impossible dimensions, or delicate, interconnected grids that defied immediate logical interpretation. She'd then annotate these with what looked like complex mathematical symbols or obscure linguistic characters. Her colleagues, if they noticed, would occasionally remark on her distracting doodles or odd artwork, dismissing them as idle hobby, a quaint eccentricity for a cleaner. They thought she was merely indulging in abstract art. She had a peculiar habit of pausing mid-thought, her gaze drifting to a distant, dusty window pane, and with her finger she'd trace one of these intricate patterns in the film of grime, lost in some unseen connection between the mundane and the profound. She wasn't daydreaming. She was observing, her mind forging links that others missed, links that allowed her to refine her intricate designs. These designs, dismissed by casual observers, actually formed components of a highly complex, unique cryptographic system. This detail, initially seen as an eccentric hobby, held the key to the massive, hidden digital fortune it was designed to secure, creating curiosity and laying the groundwork for the later revelation of its true, formidable purpose. The quiet hum of Lena's life, a delicate symphony of self-directed study and silent observation within the gilded cage of the Dubois mansion, was about to be shattered by a discordant note of public humiliation. The instrument of this disruption was none other than Madame Vivienne Dubois herself, the mansion's owner, a woman whose immense inherited wealth allowed her to posture as an arbiter of culture, particularly art. Madame Dubois exuded an air of unassailable sophistication, her pronouncements on aesthetics delivered with an almost theatrical certainty, her gaze often sweeping over her possessions as if daring anyone to question her impeccable taste. The catalyst for Lena's forced emergence came during a highly anticipated private viewing of Madame Dubois' newest acquisitions, an event specifically designed to impress influential guests and solidify her status as a formidable patron of the arts. The grand salon, usually hushed, buzzed with the low murmur of art critics, esteemed collectors, and prominent figures from the tech industry, including Dr. Eris Thorne, a renowned cybersecurity expert, and, coincidentally, a distant acquaintance of Madame Dubois. Waiters wove through the crowd, offering champagne and delicate canapés, while soft spotlights illuminated canvases and sculptures. Lena, in her gray cleaning uniform, moved unobtrusively through the periphery, collecting discarded napkins, her presence as unremarked upon as the antique mahogany sideboards. As Madame Dubois, draped in silk and diamonds, gestured dramatically towards a newly acquired abstract sculpture, her eyes, ever searching for something to critique, landed on a small, worn sketchbook tucked into Lena's cleaning cart. Lena had left it there for a moment, a rare lapse in her meticulous discretion, the corner of a particularly intricate geometric pattern peeking out from between the pages. With a delicate, manicured finger, Madame Dubois hooked the sketchbook and pulled it free. Her expression, initially one of mild curiosity, twisted into a sneer as she flipped through the pages, revealing Lena's precise, cryptic patterns. "Ah, what have we here?" Madame Dubois purred, her voice carrying through the salon, drawing the attention of her guests. She held up the sketchbook, its delicate pages filled with Lena's dense, almost otherworldly designs, for all to see. Our Lena, it seems, fancies herself an artist. A few polite, uncomfortable titters rippled through the guests. Madame Dubois chuckled, a brittle sound that grated on Lena's ears. "But my dear," she continued, her gaze sweeping dismissively over Lena, who felt her cheeks burn, "these are primitive scrawlings, wouldn't you agree? The regrettable presumption of the working class to aspire to true creativity without so much as a brushstroke of genuine talent." She let the sketchbook fall carelessly back onto the cart, implying it was utterly valueless, less than nothing. The snickers from some of the other staff members, eager to curry favor with Madame Dubois, felt like physical blows. This public shaming, specifically tailored to highlight Lena's perceived lack of sophistication and artistic merit, profoundly impacted Lena's dignity and her quiet passion, threatening to entirely dismiss her as anything more than a cleaner. Dr. Eris Thorne, standing nearby, his brow subtly furrowed, caught a fleeting glimpse of the intricate patterns before they were dropped. He recognized an unusual complexity, far beyond idle doodling, though he couldn't quite place it. Lena's initial reaction was a familiar mix of bitter disappointment, acute shame, and a familiar surge of frustration at the casual cruelty of the wealthy. Her cheeks flushed a deep crimson, and her hands, clutching her cleaning cloth, trembled almost imperceptibly. She felt the sting of Madame Dubois' sneering judgment, the disdain in her voice cutting deeper than any physical reprimand. Her first instinct was to retreat, to shrink back into the anonymity of her uniform, to bury herself in her work, and never again allow a glimpse of her true intellectual pursuits. She wanted to defend her work, to explain its intricate logic, to reveal its profound purpose, but also recognize the futility of arguing with such ingrained snobbery, with a mind so utterly blind to anything beyond its own narrow, privileged perspective. However, as Madame Dubois continued to dismissively pontificate on the true meaning of art to her nodding guests, her voice booming with unshakable conviction, a different emotion began to stir within Lena, fierce indignation. Not just for herself, but for the truth itself. She knew, with an almost visceral certainty, that her art was not merely aesthetic, but held a profound, complex purpose, a brilliance that far outstripped the superficial beauty of anything in Madame Dubois' collection. Madame Dubois' blatant contempt and the perceived injustice simultaneously ignited a defiant conviction within Lena. It awakened a dormant desire to validate her intelligence and her unique system, not just for personal pride, but for the principle that true value can exist where it is least expected, often hidden in plain sight. The quiet, analytical part of her mind, usually so serene, now pulsed with a nascent, righteous fire. The thought, cold and clear, formed in her mind. She has no idea. Madame Dubois, perhaps sensing the subtle shift in Lena's rigid posture, or simply reveling in her perceived victory, took a further, more damaging action. 2 days after the art viewing, a curt memo was issued to all domestic staff, reiterating a strict no personal effects policy during working hours, with a pointed addendum about distracting activities interfering with duties. The implication was clear. Lena's doodling was to cease. Simultaneously, Lena overheard Madame Dubois on a phone call, her voice strained despite her attempt at composure. "Yes, the usual annoyances," Madame Dubois was saying. "Persistent, unusually sophisticated attempts. They're almost artistic in their complexity. But our current measures are robust, absolutely." The call concerned her massive digital fortune, held in a labyrinthine network of cryptocurrencies and secure online assets, which was experiencing what Madame Dubois dismissed as unusual, persistent attempts at hacking. She waved off the concerns, confident in her current conventional security measures, unaware that the artistic complexity she described was indeed the signature of a highly skilled, malicious entity. This concrete, undeniable detail forced Lena to a point of no return. She stared at the memo, then at her now empty cleaning cart, her vision blurring not from tears, but from a cold, unwavering resolve. She could not simply continue her quiet existence, refining her art in secret. Madame Dubois had made sure of that. More critically, the mention of persistent, unusually sophisticated attempts at hacking sent a shiver down Lena's spine. She instinctively understood the nuance of cyber attacks. She had to actively use her art to secure this fortune, knowing that not only her reputation, but potentially a vast sum of wealth, which, if stolen, could lead to chaos and ruin, affecting even the mansion staff she cared for, as the Dubois family was known for laying off staff in times of financial distress, were now irrevocably at stake. This public humiliation and the sudden critical vulnerability of the fortune made her personal and intellectual vindication unavoidable. The sting of Madame Dubois' public dismissal and the chilling realization of her fortune's vulnerability fueled a quiet, desperate fire within Lena. Academic obscurity, a vague threat in her previous life of study, now felt like a pressing reality, threatening to swallow her intellectual curiosity whole if she couldn't prove the profound practical application of her art. But within that despair, a defiant resolve solidified. She would not be silenced. She would not allow her unique truth to be dismissed, especially when it held the key to preventing a financial catastrophe. Driven by an urgency that bypassed sleep and often sustenance, Lena retreated deeper into her unusual form of research. Her primary focus narrowed to the immediate, critical problem, bolstering the porous digital defenses of Madame Dubois' vast and increasingly targeted digital fortune. She knew, from her overheard snippets and her own intuitive understanding of evolving cyber threats, that the conventional security measures Madame Dubois employed, standard firewalls, basic encryption, and a seemingly competent but overwhelmed tech team, were fundamentally inadequate against the sophisticated, artistic attacks the fortune was experiencing. Working covertly, Lena began to deploy her unique cryptographic code, her art, during her off hours, often in the dead of night after her cleaning duties were completed. She utilized her intimate knowledge of the mansion's overlooked digital infrastructure, a benefit of her pervasive access. The dusty, unused network ports tucked behind ancient tapestries, the old, forgotten servers gathering cobwebs in the rarely accessed servants' wing basement. These were blind spots for Madame Dubois' official tech team, but for Lena, they were entry points. She meticulously designed and implemented a series of complex dynamic encryption layers, using her unique visual patterns as the ever-shifting, unpredictable keys. Each line of code was a translation of her geometric doodles, each layer a fractal pattern made concrete in cyberspace, fortifying the existing conventional security with a web of truly alien logic. One pre-dawn morning, as a faint, ethereal light began to filter through the basement windows, Lena sat hunched over an old, obscure terminal. She had spent the last 7 hours debugging a new, highly complex layer of code. Her fingers, usually adept at polishing silver, now danced across the keyboard with a frantic grace. On the screen, a series of her signature geometric patterns, the ones Madame Dubois had dismissed as primitive scrawlings, glowed in intricate, animated sequences, shifting and reforming with stunning complexity. Each shift was a response to an incoming, highly sophisticated cyber probe, a new defensive posture against an unseen, intelligent attacker. She was not just applying a static code. She was building a dynamic, almost living, digital immune system. This was the moment the true depth and purpose of her art became clear. She wasn't seeking public attention or personal glory. She was simply responding to the desperate need to protect the fortune from increasingly sophisticated cyber threats, compelled by an intellectual honesty that demanded she apply her unique understanding to a real-world problem. This was the unwilling revelation of her groundbreaking insight, a quiet, profound discovery made in the solitude of her relentless pursuit. Only one person inadvertently witnessed a glimpse of this breakthrough. Dr. Iris Thorne, the cybersecurity expert and friend of Madame Dubois, happened to be making an unscheduled late-night visit. He had been concerned by Madame Dubois' casual dismissal of the escalating cyber threats and had decided to personally assist her official tech team, who were themselves bewildered by the unconventional nature of the attacks. Wandering through the mansion, searching for the main server room, he stumbled upon the dim light emanating from the basement. Intrigued, he descended. He found Lena, her face illuminated by the eerie glow of the terminal, utterly absorbed in her work. Her usual unassuming demeanor was gone, replaced by an intense, almost feverish concentration. Dr. Thorne, initially confused by the sight of a cleaner interacting with a server, paused. His trained eye, however, quickly recognized the complex, visual patterns flashing across the screen. He had only ever seen such intricate, self-evolving algorithms in highly classified government projects. He watched, mesmerized, as Lena typed, her actions precise, almost instinctive, each keystroke creating a new layer of an unfathomably complex encryption. He saw her sketches on the notepad beside her, the same doodles he'd briefly glimpsed at the art viewing, now clearly not art, but the very blueprints for the digital fortress unfolding on screen. He saw the sheer audacity of the theoretical leaps being made, the complete reimagining of cryptographic principles. Dr. Thorne, a man accustomed to the cutting edge of digital security, was utterly astonished, sensing a profound, paradigm-shifting approach to digital defense. He made no sound, simply stood in the shadows, a silent, awestruck observer. Madame Dubois, meanwhile, remained completely unaware, confident her existing security measures, and perhaps her official tech team, whom she had explicitly warned against over-dramatizing the attacks, were handling everything, reinforcing her ignorance and superficiality. Professor Dubois, still basking in the glow of her supposed impeccable taste and financial security, indeed decided to reinforce her intellectual and social dominance. Unaware of Lena's covert intervention, and perhaps fueled by a lingering, unacknowledged insecurity regarding the complexity of the digital world, she actively doubled down on her dismissive view of Lena and anything she considered lowbrow or unconventional. She gave a condescending interview to Societal Pages magazine, where she expounded on the importance of proper education and breeding in creative and intellectual endeavors, implicitly criticizing Lena's primitive scrawlings and subtly mocking the notion of genius arising from unexpected places. True genius, she declared, is cultivated, not stumbled upon. She also, perhaps as a petty cost-cutting measure or a deliberate slight, quietly reduced Lena's working hours, assigning her more demeaning tasks like cleaning the garage, convinced Lena was merely an unthinking drone whose services could be easily minimized. These actions further solidified Madame Dubois' role as the Type A villain antagonist, driven by elitism, superficiality, and a profound, almost pathological disregard for anyone she deemed beneath her. Her dismissal of Lena had escalated into a public, professional campaign against her very humanity, her right to aspire to anything beyond her assigned station. The stage was now set for a dramatic, inevitable clash, a confrontation between superficiality and profound genius, between entrenched prejudice and undeniable truth. Madame Dubois' relentless campaign to solidify her social standing and preemptively quash any dissenting opinions on taste or class reached its crescendo with the announcement of her annual charity gala. This wasn't merely a social event, it was Madame Dubois' personal dominion, a grand stage where she annually reaffirmed her status as a titan of philanthropy and an arbiter of exquisite taste. This year, it was specifically billed as the platform for her most significant philanthropic announcement to date, a massive donation of her digital fortune to a newly established arts foundation designed to showcase both her immense wealth and her unparalleled influence. The mansion, typically a silent behemoth, now hummed with the frantic preparations of event planners, florists, and catering staff. Lena, moving through the periphery of this organized chaos, felt the palpable anticipation, a mixture of social excitement for the guests and a subtle, unspoken anxiety about the persistent, unusually sophisticated cyber threats Madame Dubois continued to dismiss. The opulent gala hall buzzed with an air of superficial gravity. Esteemed guests from the art world, finance, and technology mingled, their hushed conversations punctuated by the clink of crystal glasses and the distant strains of a string quartet. Madame Dubois, draped in custom haute couture and radiating an aura of unshakable confidence, moved through the crowd like a queen among her subjects, accepting deferential nods and fawning praise with practiced ease. She was utterly oblivious to the quiet storm brewing, a digital tempest that threatened to engulf her carefully constructed world. In this formidable symbolic arena, Lena stood largely alone. Dr. Eris Thorne, her unwitting helper, was indeed present, having been invited as a guest due to his prominence in the cybersecurity field. He sat discreetly in a corner, sipping champagne, his gaze often drifting to the mansion's Wi-Fi network indicators, a subtle frown on his face. He had heard whispers of the escalating cyber incidents targeting the Dubois fortune and was intrigued, though he had no idea of Lena's direct involvement. A few junior staff members, remembering Lena's quiet kindness or witnessing her intense late-night work, offered hesitant, encouraging smiles, but none dared to openly defy Madame Dubois' looming presence. The intellectual and digital battle was solely Lena's. She carried the weight of her months of solitary research, the intricate equations, the unconventional diagrams, all distilled into a single, undeniable truth. Her art was the only thing standing between Madame Dubois and financial ruin. She had to present her complex, groundbreaking code against the overwhelming weight of Madame Dubois' established reputation, her polished rhetoric, and the ingrained skepticism of the social elite. Her only weapons were her raw intellectual brilliance, her meticulous research, and her unwavering conviction in her truth. She clutched a slim, unassuming tablet hidden beneath her cleaning apron, containing not a voluminous paper, but a series of elegantly simple proofs. Her notes for what would be the most important and terrifying presentation of her life. The time pressure was excruciating, a relentless drumbeat in Lena's ears. Madame Dubois was already at the gilded podium, bathed in the glow of spotlights, basking in the introductory applause. She began her opening remarks, her voice resonating with cultivated authority, building her narrative of immense generosity and social responsibility. She spoke of the irrefutable stability of her financial empire and the unshakable integrity of her digital assets, meticulously explaining how her astute investments allowed for such grand philanthropy. She was moments away from delivering the climactic portion of her speech, a definitive announcement of her colossal donation, a statement that would further cement her legacy and implicitly, irrevocably, dismiss any dissenting voice, including Lena's very existence beyond a cleaning uniform. Simultaneously, in a hidden, high-tech command center in a nondescript building across the city, a multinational hacking syndicate, known as the Digital Shadows, was preparing their final assault. Their leader, a shadowy figure known only as Nexus, watched the gala's live feed with a chilling smirk. She celebrates her stability, Nexus murmured to his team, while we prepare her fall. A synchronized countdown appeared on their dark web forum, indicating the imminent complete wipe of Madame Dubois' assets, timed precisely for her grand announcement. The tension was amplified by the presence of a cynical tech journalist, Mr. Desmond Pierce, a guest at the gala. Julian Vance, a disgraced former tech consultant who had previously been outmaneuvered by Nexus, had, at Nexus's subtle instigation, via an anonymous, untraceable tip-off, supplied Pierce with insider information about Dubois' perceived fragile security, preparing him to break a sensational story about Madame Dubois' financial vulnerabilities and her impending ruin. Pierce, perched near the stage, his smartphone discreetly ready, was about to become the accidental herald of Dubois' downfall. The dramatic irony was palpable, almost suffocating. The hundreds of brilliant minds in the audience, the esteemed colleagues, the eager socialites, and Madame Dubois herself, were utterly oblivious to the seismic digital war that was about to occur. They were listening to the swan song of an old paradigm of wealth and security, completely unaware that a quiet cleaner, armed with her primitive scrawlings of code, held the key to the fortune's security and the imminent public revelation of her savior. Lena took a deep breath, clutching her tablet beneath her apron, her gaze fixed on the imposing figure at the podium. Her moment, the moment of truth, was upon her. Madame Dubois' voice, resonant with the authority of inherited wealth, filled the grand gala hall. On the immense digital display behind her, elegant graphics shimmered, showcasing the supposed stability of her vast digital fortune, seemingly unassailable. She concluded her segment on her philanthropic intentions with a flourish, declaring her donation a testament to the enduring power of foresight and secure investments. A wave of murmurs, then polite applause, rippled through the esteemed audience. This was the crescendo of her social empire, and for a moment, the weight of it threatened to crush Lena. The air crackled with the triumph of established dogma and unquestioned wealth. This was the bated breath moment for Lena. Everything seemed to go wrong, her vital truth seemingly drowned out by the noise and the pervasive acceptance of Madame Dubois' pronouncements. Just as Madame Dubois turned to acknowledge the applause, her hand already reaching for a crystal glass of water, Lena acted. A subtle digital alert, an almost imperceptible shimmer on the hidden tablet beneath her apron, confirmed the hacker's final decisive move. Her voice, initially a mere tremor of resolve, gained an unexpected clarity, cutting through the polite murmurs. "Madame Dubois," she called out, stepping forward from the periphery, her cleaning uniform a stark contrast to the glittering gowns and tailored suits. "With all due respect, your stability has a fundamental oversight." A collective gasp swept through the auditorium. Madame Dubois, startled, spun around, her polished smile instantly replaced by a scowl. "Lena?" she sneered, her voice now laced with undisguised contempt. "I believe we settled your artistic aspirations weeks ago. This is hardly the time for your bizarre disruptions. Return to your duties." Several guests turned, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and annoyance, urging Lena to comply with their disapproving glares. One even hissed, "Don't you dare ruin this girl." But Lena stood her ground, her eyes fixed on Madame Dubois, a quiet fire burning within them. "The annoyances you've been experiencing, Madame," Lena stated, her voice clear and resonant. "They weren't just annoyances, they were a sophisticated attack. And they're not over. They're about to wipe your entire fortune." She stepped further forward towards the stage, her movements deliberate. Madame Dubois, incandescent with rage and a dawning, unwelcome tremor of fear, moved to block her. "Security!" she bellowed, her voice echoing through the hall. "Remove this delusional cleaner!" Just as a burly event security guard began to move from the back, Lena reached the edge of the stage. With a swift, almost practiced motion, she pulled out her hidden tablet. Simultaneously, she tapped a discreet earpiece, her voice calm but firm as she spoke into a hidden mic. "Dr. Thorne, prepare for emergency protocol. I'm taking manual control." She connected her tablet to a nearby, seemingly innocuous podium port, overriding the gala's main digital display system. The elegant graphics of Madame Dubois' foundation vanished, replaced by a stark black screen. "Your conventional security," Lena stated, her voice resonating with quiet command, presumes a linear attack. But what if the threat is fractal? What if your fortune is being unraveled from multiple unseen dimensions of cyberspace? With dazzling speed and precision, she began to type on her tablet. Elegant, fluid lines of code flowed onto the immense screen behind her, unlike anything the audience, or even Madame Dubois' frantic tech team in the back room, had ever seen. Interspersed with the dense programming were those subtle, abstract geometric patterns, swirling fractals, interconnected nodes, representing the interdimensional resonance of her unique cryptographic system, now actively counterattacking the hackers. Each stroke was deliberate, each line a precise hammer blow against the hackers' sophisticated exploits, revealing the terrifying simplicity of her elegant defense. She filled the screen not with complexity, but with an astonishing, almost frightening clarity that laid bare the fundamental oversight at the heart of Madame Dubois' vulnerable, conventionally secured fortune. Then came the bated breath moment. Madame Dubois, initially scoffing, her arms crossed, suddenly froze. Her eyes, fixed on the rapidly scrolling code and the intricate patterns that seemed to pulse on the screen, widened imperceptibly. She saw the sheer volume of data being processed, the speed of the counterattack. She opened her mouth to retort, but no sound came out. The security guard, halfway to the stage, paused, his brow furrowed, caught by the sheer audacity of Lena's impromptu live demonstration. On stage, Madame Dubois was mid-sentence, her hand raised to announce the donation amount, when the immense digital display, now controlled by Lena, flashed. It didn't just flicker to 0. A series of angry red lines of code, clearly from the hackers, scrolled frantically across the screen, overlaid with a stark, taunting message. Fortune compromised. Your wealth is ours. Good night. A collective gasp swept through the gala, followed by an electrifying silence. Desmond Pierce, the cynical tech journalist, his eyes wide with a mix of horror and exhilaration, began furiously typing on his phone. Simultaneously, in the hidden back room, Madame Dubois' official tech team was in a frenzy, shouting about rapidly disappearing digital assets and impenetrable firewalls. "It's a full-spectrum wipe," yelled one technician, his voice cracking. "We're losing everything." Dr. Eris Thorne, sweating and frantic, stared at a screen displaying a cascade of encrypted data, recognizing the unique visual patterns of Lena's art embedded within the code, patterns that were now changing with blinding speed, actively fighting the hackers. He understood what's happening. He pointed frantically to Lena, who had just connected her tablet, her face grimly determined. "It's her code," he yelled. "You're the only one who can control this, Lena." Just as the fortune seemed irretrievably lost, Lena, with a final, almost imperceptible adjustment to a sequence of geometric patterns on her screen, executed a masterstroke. The patterns locked into place, transforming into a glowing, impenetrable fortress of visual code. On the main gala screen, the hacker's red message froze, then began to dissolve, replaced by Lena's own elegant green patterns. The digital display at the gala flickered, then stabilized. The initial charity amount, which had vanished, reappeared, then steadily began to increase, showing not only the recovered fortune, but an additional significant sum. The digital assets recovered from the now collapsed hackers' own systems, redirected and secured by Lena's ingenious counterprogram. The hackers' attack not only halted, but their own systems began to implode, their data being rerouted and secured by Lena's ingenious counterprogram. This unexpected, devastatingly powerful reversal simultaneously silenced the hackers and stunned everyone. Madame Dubois' face contorted. The arrogance drained from her, leaving behind a pallor of utter intellectual devastation and a profound public humiliation. Her eyes, usually sharp and dismissive, glazed over as she stared at the screen, then at Lena, her empire crumbling before her very eyes. Desmond Pierce's smirk dissolved into a look of astonished professional ruin. His scandalous story evaporated, replaced by a dawning realization of a far more incredible truth. The official tech team's faces shifted from terror to awe, their frantic efforts replaced by the quiet hum of a perfectly secured system. The audience, initially confused by the flicker, erupted in a spontaneous, thunderous applause as the charity amount was confirmed, then doubled, then tripled, unaware of the digital war that had just taken place, but recognizing the restored grandeur of Madame Dubois and the quiet, unassuming figure who had made it possible. For Lena, the victory was quiet but profound. The vindication of her true genius, the revolutionary nature of her art as code, and the ultimate triumph of underestimated talent over elitism and superficiality. The thunderous applause for Lena, still ringing in the grand gala hall, was a death knell for Madame Dubois' unassailable facade. She stood on stage, a broken woman, her face a mask of utter humiliation amidst the wreckage of her social and financial pretense. The cameras, initially focused on her philanthropic pronouncements, now swiveled to capture the quiet cleaner who had just dismantled a multinational hacking syndicate with a few elegant strokes of code. The online live stream of the gala, which Desmond Pierce, the tech journalist, had already secretly redirected to his own professional channels, was quickly going viral, capturing every second of Madame Dubois' unraveling and Lena's quiet triumph. Madame Dubois' downfall was swift and absolute, and brutally public. Within hours, clips of her dismissive comments about Lena's scrawlings, juxtaposed with Lena's masterful counterhack, flooded social media. Her pristine reputation as an infallible patron of the arts and an astute businesswoman was not merely tarnished, it was shattered. The Societal Pages interview, where she had espoused on proper education and breeding, now served as a damning testament to her profound snobbery and ignorance, fueling a firestorm of ridicule. Investors, unnerved by the public display of vulnerability and the sheer arrogance that had almost cost her billions, began discreetly pulling their funds from her ventures. Her carefully curated art collection was quietly audited, revealing several questionable acquisitions. She was forced to issue a public statement, a humiliating acknowledgement of Lena's pivotal role in securing her fortune, a bitter pill for her ingrained elitism. While not financially ruined thanks to Lena, her social standing plummeted, and she became a pariah within the very circles she had so desperately sought to impress, losing all that she had valued, her status, her accolades, her carefully constructed legacy, to the undeniable truth Lena had unveiled. Her pride, the very engine of her ambition, had consumed her, leaving only public shame and professional ruin in its wake. For Lena, the world shifted from dim lamplight to blinding brilliance. The sheer audacity and brilliance of her visual cryptography system immediately captivated the global cybersecurity community. Dr. Eris Thorne, who had silently witnessed her work in the mansion basement, and then her public triumph, wasted no time. He immediately approached Lena with an offer that bypassed conventional academic and corporate hierarchies. He offered her a full partnership in his cutting-edge cybersecurity firm, CipherGuard, with unprecedented creative control over a newly established division dedicated to interdimensional cryptography. This wasn't merely a job, it was an invitation to transform her art into a legitimate, groundbreaking field of digital defense. She was no longer burdened by financial worries or the suffocating constraints of academic marginalization. Her cramped apartment was exchanged for a spacious, state-of-the-art office within CipherGuard's secure headquarters. Its walls soon adorned not with textbooks, but with groundbreaking new diagrams of her evolving code. She was given complete intellectual freedom, an unlimited budget for research and development, and the autonomy to build a team of brilliant, like-minded and open-minded cryptographers and artists eager to explore the new frontiers of security she had unveiled. Her former struggles transformed into a position of profound influence and intellectual leadership, her quiet brilliance finally given the platform it deserved. A few weeks after the gala, Lena sat with Dr. Eris Thorne, her now official helper and business partner, in the quiet solitude of CipherGuard's rooftop garden. The late afternoon sun dappled through the glass panels of the surrounding skyscrapers, casting shifting patterns on the sleek modern benches. "You know, Lena," Dr. Thorne began, a warm, almost reverent smile on his face, "when I first saw your patterns in that sketchbook at the gala, I knew there was something more. Then, seeing you in the basement that night, and what you did on that screen, it's not just a paradigm shift, it's a revolution. You've redefined what's possible in cybersecurity." Lena traced a pattern on the condensation of her water glass, a habit that remained from her cleaning days. "It was always there, Eris. The numbers, the patterns in nature, the way reality organizes itself. People just couldn't see it because it didn't fit their predefined frameworks. Madame Dubois couldn't see it because her ego and prejudice blinded her to any value outside her narrow world. "And your courage," Dr. Thorne added, his voice soft but firm, "to stand up there, alone, against decades of entrenched thought and a woman who could crush you. That's as profound as your genius. Many brilliant minds get silenced because they lack that courage. It makes me wonder," Dr. Thorne mused, his gaze sweeping over the cityscape, "how many other insignificant variables, how many other primitive scrawlings are waiting to be understood? How many other truths are being missed because we're too set in our ways, too quick to dismiss what doesn't fit our preconceived notions?" Their reflective dialogue, though brief, encapsulated the intricate journey they had shared, the unexpected twists of intellectual discovery, and the profound lessons learned about the nature of truth, the dangers of academic and social dogma, and the bravery it takes to challenge established norms. Lena looked out at the vibrant city, a subtle shift in her posture reflecting her journey from a quiet, overlooked cleaner to a recognized intellectual leader. The world no longer seemed a place of silent struggle, but one of boundless possibility. "The universe is always whispering its secrets, Eris," she replied, a thoughtful glint in her eyes. "We just have to be willing to listen, even when the whispers challenge everything we think we know." Her words, simple yet profound, resonated with the quiet strength she had discovered within herself, marking not just the resolution of a conflict, but the dawn of a new era of open inquiry and boundless intellectual exploration, in a world now irrevocably altered by her unique vision. 5 years later, the scent of fresh-brewed coffee and cutting-edge technology filled Lena Petrova's spacious, sun-drenched office at CipherGuard headquarters. Gone were the precarious stacks of dog-eared textbooks and the humble cleaning supplies. In their place, meticulously organized servers hummed softly, and sleek, interactive displays showcased her intricate visual code. Her once cramped apartment was a distant memory, replaced by a workspace that pulsed with quiet, intellectual energy. She still worked late into the night, driven by the same insatiable curiosity, yet now supported by a team of brilliant, open-minded cryptographers and artists, eager to explore the new frontiers of interdimensional cryptography she had unveiled. Lena, once a solitary shadow moving through Madame Dubois' mansion, was now a world-renowned pioneer, her groundbreaking system forming the cornerstone of a new cybersecurity paradigm. Lena was deeply committed to paying it forward. She understood the quiet despair of being overlooked, the burning frustration of having truth dismissed, and the profound impact of a single act of kindness or cruelty. She founded the Petrova Patterns Initiative, a nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering interdisciplinary talent. It provided generous grants and mentorship to young innovators, particularly those from unconventional backgrounds, who were pursuing radical, potentially paradigm-shifting ideas that might otherwise be stifled by traditional corporate or academic structures. She ensured these aspiring minds had the financial freedom and intellectual support she had so desperately lacked. Her mentorship program, the Cipher Weavers, actively sought out students who saw connections where others saw only disparate fields, fostering an environment where daring questions and unorthodox approaches to technology and art were celebrated, not suppressed. She frequently gave public lectures, not just on her cryptographic theories, but on the importance of intellectual honesty, courage, and the necessity of questioning established norms. Her soft voice carrying a powerful message that resonated far beyond the confines of the tech world, inspiring countless individuals to trust their unique visions. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Lena stood before a packed lecture hall at a global cybersecurity summit, the very same venue that had hosted Madame Dubois' ill-fated gala years prior. But today, the air was vibrant with eager anticipation, not stifling orthodoxy. She was explaining a particularly complex aspect of her interdimensional cryptography, her fingers gliding across a vast interactive display, sketching an elegant, swirling, self-evolving equation. It was the very equation that years ago had shattered Madame Dubois' world, revealing her profound oversight and securing her fortune. She paused, turning to the diverse audience, a mix of seasoned tech professionals, curious artists, and eager students, her eyes alight with the same quiet passion that had driven her through countless lonely nights. This equation, she said, gesturing to the glowing symbols behind her, was once dismissed as mere doodling. It challenged everything we thought we knew about digital security. But the digital realm, much like the universe, doesn't care about our preconceptions. It simply is. She smiled, a profound, knowing smile. Our task, as cryptographers, as innovators, isn't to force the digital world into our existing frameworks, but to listen to its whispers, to follow the truth wherever it leads, no matter how uncomfortable or revolutionary it may seem. Sometimes, the most secure lock is the one that looks like a piece of art. The equation, now widely accepted and taught as fundamental in advanced cybersecurity programs, was not merely a formula. It was a symbol of the profound shift she had brought about, a beacon of truth illuminating a new path for digital understanding. Lena stood at the nexus of a thriving intellectual community, no longer confined to the back rooms of a mansion, but a guiding light for the future of technology and human ingenuity. She had not only disproven a wealthy patron's dismissive judgment, but, in doing so, had opened up an entirely new dimension of human understanding, proving that even the most quiet and unassuming voices can echo with the loudest truths, perpetually seeking the next uncharted frontier of knowledge. Her art had indeed secured a fortune, but more importantly, it had unlocked a future. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.